You're listening to Tapestry, a podcast by a music lover for music lovers. I'm your host, Kelly. Music is a thread that weaves a course throughout our lives. Join me on a journey to unravel that thread and bring you the stories behind what inspires musicians to create. Side note, Tapestry is an uncensored podcast. Don't say I didn't warn you. What's up, everybody? Thanks for coming back for another episode. I'm about to introduce you to episode 47 of Tapestry, where tonight I talk with Nate Drobner and Leon Feldman, two members of the Vancouver-based progressive rock band Glass Kites. We talked about all sorts of things, including applying the principle of maximalism to music creation, the dangers of ideology and how their music expresses this, and how to appeal to one's inner ear. Here's a little bit of the monster track Leviathan off their latest album, Glass Kites 2. Tonight we have 2 of 5 members of Glass Kites joining me, and Leon and Nate, why don't you two go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then if you could each give me a little bit, just a little bit of kind of your musical history, if you will.
Okay, I'm Leon Feldman. So I guess I'm an instrumentalist in the band and a composer as well. And
I'm Nate, and I pretty much do the same thing as that, except I play bass guitar and keyboards in the band. And yeah, we write the songs together, Leon and I.
Okay, so really you two are like the right people I should be talking to. Everyone else is just help, really.
we spearheaded, the two of us sort of spearheaded, but everybody contributes to the arrangements and to the compositions as well. But me and Nate wrote most of the newest album.
Okay, fair. Now, I know on your Bandcamp I'd gone back and looked at, I think there were like some lineup changes in between this album and the first album, but then I also realized your new album that I'm sure we'll talk a lot about, this and the previous one, there was a 9-year gap in between that. So, well, let me, before I get into that, talk about how did Glass Kites come to be? And then also, where are you guys from? And, what led to this project getting started?
Okay, well, we were in a band called Right, R-I-G-H-T, bit of a weird name, but we were in a band called Right for a number of years together. And then that band sort of eventually turned into Glass Kites. And we released our first record with the core lineup. And then after we released our first album, we sort of with another band moved out to Montreal. We took a little bit of a hiatus. And when we came back, our drummer, Duncan, he stayed behind. So we kind of were missing a drummer for a time. Okay. So once we got back to Vancouver, we sort of started me and Nate would get together and we would sort of start to write together. But a lot of the time I was actually sitting at the kit, just trying to, I'm not a great drummer, but just trying to figure things out and create drum parts and write. And yeah, we just sort of started experimenting and writing with the two of us. And then it sort of spawned from there. And then once we started writing again, it sort of evolved naturally. It just took a long time. We started writing around 2013. We started jamming with the band in a jam space around 2014, I would say, to 2016. And then we started recording around 2015 to 2018, and then worked on it for way too long, and it just sort of took forever, but we wanted to do it right. So,
partly because we're both involved in a number of other musical adventures ourselves, so that's one of the reasons it took so long as well. Is we got a lot of other stuff going on, and it's a passion project for us. So
yeah, it's sort of like a sculpture. I describe it as like a sculpture that I've sort of been chipping away at for a number of years.
And also, we're from Vancouver, BC, Canada.
Right. Yeah, I was going to mention that because we were talking about the time difference, and then also, Leon, when you mentioned Montreal, I know even as an American that Montreal is kind of like the place to be in Canada if you're into like technical death metal, but I wasn't sure what the rest of the scene is like there. And then of course, you know, I do have that on my list of questions is to talk about what is the Vancouver scene like, because I don't know a whole lot about it.
It is.
As if there's a music scene right now, to be honest.
Right,
Yeah.
I know, it's a bit strange. Nate, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, Vancouver is an interesting city because it's really small, like in terms of population and in landmass. So with a place this small, you'll get the same scenes as you'll have everywhere, a punk scene, you know, metal scene, indie scene. But the difference is here is that there's such small scenes that it is hard for people to like really get noticed on a global level or something because the scenes aren't big enough. Yeah, no one really knows what the deal is with our city, but there's tons of music going. There's tons of music happening, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of makes me sad to hear, only because I would think with the proximity, you know, not being too far from Seattle, Portland. I mean, yeah, I know that's really like the larger city. Correct me if I'm wrong, on the west coast of Canada, but you know, I would think there would be more of like an identity. Right. Yeah, trying to drive all the way across your ginormous country to tour.
Yeah, it is pretty big, and
That's another thing too.
It's a bit isolated for sure, but it's a great scene. It just is. It's not necessarily like a Toronto or an LA or a New York or a somewhere with more of a nightlife. Like most of the clubs here close at 2, and it's just more of a like people like to hike more than like go out to clubs and stuff.
You know. Well, it sounds like you found your crew of people to make, you know, dream pop progressive rock. Basically, you happen to find 4 other people in Vancouver who you could do that with.
Yeah.
I have to say, I was really fascinated by your list of influences. I know when you sent me the list, Leon, you mentioned Genesis, Radiohead, Mew, Pink Floyd, and the Beatles. I will ask: is the name of the band a reference to the Mew album and the Glass-Handed Kites?
Ding 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 ding.
Okay, cool. I don't know what I win, points or something, but yeah. Yes! Okay. I only started listening to Mew like last year, and I just, oh my god, they're great. I fell in love with them, and then when I listened to your guys' stuff, I totally could hear the kind of that like lush, just like floating, like driving a car in a sunny day type of feeling. Like, I don't know, it just feels kind of like your music kind of takes you out of your body a little bit. And I found that very, very cool. So
yeah, we definitely were both obsessed with Mew right around the time of the inception of the band. And for me, I think what I loved about Mew, and Nate introduced me to Mew, but they had such violent contrast in their music. Like they would have these ripping drum, guitar, heavy parts, but then the most angelic vocal ever over it.
Yeah.
and that was just fascinating to me or something. Like the idea that you could make something that was both of those things. And it was sort of an homage, and we did it for people like you who get it, who get that it's a little, you know, a shout out to them, you know.
I was just gonna say that's probably our favorite. That's definitely our favorite Mew record. Yeah, that's our favorite.
Okay. So this is kind of an abstract question, but I guess because I think of Mew as a band, almost like, yes, they're a band, but the way they perform and the way they kind of market themselves is almost more of like an art form, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's an aspect of your music that kind of, I don't know how to say this, like lives in another place that's not just music?
Okay. What do you mean by that? Like lives in another place?
Like, do you treat it as art maybe too? Like, you know, what is the role of the music you make, and why is it important to you?
Well, I will say that the decisions that we make aren't based on what's the best practice thing to do for your career, for instance. Like I think the last song is called This World / Projector, which is a over 10-minute piece. And, you know, by all accounts, for streaming numbers, you should be cutting that song in half. But
Yeah.
That's not how we wanted to present that song. We wanted to present that song as a 10-minute piece of music. You're not supposed to just start halfway through. You're supposed to listen to the whole piece of music, because that's the thing that's missing today so much in music, and that's what at least I wanted to make sure that we achieve, or tried to achieve, in our music, is like a little bit of a longer experience, actually sitting down and like going into an environment.
And that's really what progressive rock is supposed to be. Progressive rock is supposed to take you to different places and in your mind or whatever. And we're just, we happen to fit into that category of progressive rock because we do those things. And there's an emphasis on the art for sure. As I said, it's a passion project, and it's for ourselves for sure. Like, this is just us being creative and seeing what we can do really with music. So,
like, if we both write stuff, and if we write some, I don't know, at least for me, if I write something and it's a little bit odd or wouldn't necessarily work in a pop context, like, my first thing is, I could do this with Glass Kites. Like, we can do the adventurous stuff in this group. Like, that was kind of the sort of an outlet for that, I think.
Right. With your other I don't want to call them non-passion projects, but your other primary projects, are they totally different than this then? Yeah.
No, they're all I mean, I would say, I've tried to make sure everything I do is a passion project, but we both work as producers for a number of different kinds of artists, from pop singers to rappers to things like that. So it can't always be a passion project if you're working for someone else, but of course we try to make sure we're working with like-minded people when we do those, when we sign up for something, for sure.
So that's why your album sounds so good, because you guys are both producers. Got it.
We're definitely obsessive about the production, but I feel like I still have a long way to go, for sure.
I mean, I'm a very, very picky woman when it comes to sound, and I get made fun of a lot for it, and because I'm like, I won't listen to anything older than the 90s because it's just, like, it just sounds too old. And that was actually a note I made because I went back and I listened to the second album again last night, and one of the notes I wrote down was that I feel like, I thought I wrote it down. Oh yeah, okay, there it is. I said, this album to me feels both timeless and modern, like it was recorded in some dusty studio in 1973, but somehow got transported to right now. And
wow,
I seriously don't know how you achieved that, but it really feels like this weird Genesis time warp. But it was so lovely to listen to, because I can't stand like the super crunchy, like, I don't know. There's a human element I want, but I don't want too much of it so that it sounds like totally unpolished. And I think your music kind of sits in the middle.
I mean, all I can say is yes to all that.
Yes to everything.
You've really kind of hit the nail on the head with pretty much every point there.
Yeah.
So seriously, we upset, like, I really wanted a raw quality to the album, but I also wanted it to be polished in its own way. So, and we're both obsessed with the production sound of the 1970s, for sure. And that was not that you could ever actually achieve that, unless you're actually recording in the way they did it. But we want, it's exactly what you said. It was kind of like we wanted like this weird seed from the 1970s to kind of like grow into its own weird modern hybrid thing. And it just took a while, but
I was going to say this, the 70s sound is really apparent, but I did see that when I was looking through the instrumental credits and stuff on Bandcamp, that you had like a Fender Rhodes on the album, which I thought was cool, and that really lends itself to that super 70s sound. But
they insisted on that because it's true, we did use one, and he wanted to specifically list that, and that is something they did in the 70s. They gave you a little window into how they made it by listing the instruments they used. And, that was definitely a shout out.
Yeah, we love the Fender Rhodes so much. It was used all through music, basically until, well, it's always kind of been there, but it's sort of fallen out of fashion in the last 20 years or so. Like since the year 2000, it kind of fell out of fashion, but we just love that instrument so much. And yeah, I think that might be what gives it a vintage quality, but I'm surprised that someone would even think of a vintage vibe because of how polished it is. But you're right about it, because we are heavily inspired by those kind of bands from that time.
I think the layering too, like have so many layers. You know, the Phil Spector, like, you know, just having everything happening, you know, Rhodes, strings,
maximalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely explored maximalism on this on this record.
Can you expound upon that as a concept? Because I've maybe never heard that word. I mean, I can tell what it means, but I've never heard it applied to music.
The opposite of minimalism. So, you know, instead of one note, we're playing 10 at once. I don't know. It's we're again, because we're just having fun with it. It's like, let's try this. It's like, it's rarely like, let's only use like this one note through the song. And then, you know, we want to do that too, but it's definitely like, let's just add another layer and let's see how far we could take this. Yeah. That's what's maximal about it, is you just get tons of different layers and different parts, different time signatures, changing sections, and yeah.
Is there well, being that there was a 9-year gap in between your two albums, is there something that you and the rest of the guys in the band like went through in your life in between those 9 years that like really greatly, profoundly affected the new album? Or
interesting. Do you mean the theme of the lyrics, sort of?
You can talk about that, but I just didn't know if there was anything that actually, you know, I can't tell what your age is, either of you, so 30. I wasn't sure if like, oh, you know, I got married, or I had a kid, and suddenly I had a whole new perspective on music, you know?
I'm 30 myself. I think, are you 30?
Okay, I am too.
30.
30.
Oh, we're all 30.
Oh, 1990.
30.
1990,
yeah,
baby.
Numerology is off the hook. I mean, a lot of things happened in that period of time, you know. But in terms of the themes on the record, I think I was impacted by a lot of stuff I was looking into on just the nature of ideology. And
okay.
Like Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens.
Right.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay.
But then also the opposite, like, you know, Francis Collins, and just, I don't know, there's a lot of, there's a bit of a theme on the record of, I guess, the danger of ideology in general. Not any specific ideology, but the danger that it can pose.
Well, you released an album in a very timely time period, you know?
Well, we didn't want to release it in 2020 because that year just seemed tainted. And we released our first record on January 1st, the first one. So we felt like, you know what, new year, sort of fresh start a little bit, hopefully.
Yeah, and we heard something was going on down in the States, but I don't know much more about that then. I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say, like, you know, as if 2020 wasn't already like the worst year on record for most people alive. Well, no, that's not totally true. But I mean, for most people our age, like, yes, it is. 2020 was profoundly the worst year we've ever been alive. But I think in 2021 we're probably gonna be seeing a lot of bands have been sitting on material, just like feeling like they finally have been able to get out of the shithole that was 2020 and just, you know, present their creativity to the world. So
that was the idea. New year,
and it's kind of ironic too, because it's a good time to release an album during a pandemic in a way. There's you know, two sides of the sword, but like, it's good in a way because everybody's on their computers, just with nothing else to do than just check out some new music. And when it's not a pandemic, everybody's out and about, and it's hard to just sit them down and listen to your album. But of course, you can't play shows. But
yeah, that's the idea behind the like long form transitional song to song sort of thing too. Is I hope that it's something where somebody can go, a place that somebody can go for 30 minutes, listen to the whole thing. I mean, I know it's a lot to ask today, like people just listen to singles or whatever, but just to get, that's my hope, that like somebody can have like a bit of a refuge from everything that's going on. It's hard to, you look at the news every day and it's just like, geez.
Right. Well, I have to say, I'm an album listener. I actually purposely avoid singles, so I am your audience,
Perfect.
and I do think that the whole pandemic has changed just the way we kind of treat our attention spans. So, I didn't know I don't know at what stage you guys were kind of closing in on having this done, and if the pandemic really, like,
slowed us down.
I guess. Did it like? Why
it
am I hunting
down
for the words? I just wasn't sure if it was like compelling you guys to be like, all right, we got to get this thing out, or hey, what's another year or two? Who really cares?
It's sort of. There was a time around a year ago where I thought it was almost done, and yeah, COVID did not help for sure. It just became, I don't know. It definitely punted it down the road a bit. And then it was just a matter of getting it done to a point that I actually thought it was done, and that took a while,
That's usually a question I like to ask people as well, is how do you develop your own personal sense of when a piece of art or music is finished?
I don't know. I think that's innate in a sense. You just have to be honest with yourself with whether what you're listening to actually impresses you as a fan of music. And,
you said that was innate?
Yeah, innate. Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of.
I think that's innate. I think that's entirely innate. Yeah.
Yeah. Innate hands.
No, I mean it's tough. That's like honestly the toughest part of being creative. That's the hardest part of being a creative person, and
Definitely.
It's the toughest part of art. Is when is this done? You can go on forever with something, but when it's done, in my opinion, no matter what stage you say it's done, is still it's good. Like if the initial idea was good and stuff is there that you liked when you wrote it, no matter when it ends up coming out or what process you went through, it'll still be an amazing piece of art. But it'll just change depending on how you work on it. Change the way it comes off.
For sure.
Yeah.
And like producing is obviously a really complicated art form, and to be honest, I was sort of learning on the job because I had a sound of how I wanted the sound, the record to sound in my head, and it just. We wrote it a while ago, but I just wasn't ready as a producer yet, and
because we mixed it. I mean, it was all in-house pretty much, everything.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, completely in-house. Yeah, like we went into studios as well, and we recorded it all over the place actually over a long period.
But the mixing process and the only thing we didn't do is the mastering. But yeah.
Yeah. So
do you feel like that does give you that's got to give you a higher degree of control over what the end sounds like when you're really from literally start to finish, from each note to the end.
It does,
all under one roof.
Exactly. And the thing is I didn't want to drive somebody crazy because I'm very particular about how I want things to sound, and I felt like almost guilty, like I'm going to put somebody through that. No, a little bit more reverb, a little bit less. No, you got to transition.
Here, you know what? You just do it.
Yeah, you know what? Let me just, And and that was what I did for a long time. I was just a musician, but then at a certain point I decided I got to do this. I got to start mixing and producing, and But I eventually felt like, okay, I can do this.
Well, that actually, what you just said, Leon, did make me remember. I usually ask this towards the beginning of the interview, and we got off to a blazing start. So, how did both of you guys start playing music? Did you start on other instruments, or did you have like a family you grew up with that had, was full of musicians? Were you the first, or what?
I think we both had a similar sort of thing going on in terms of that neither of our parents or my parents are musicians, but they played a little bit when they were younger. But they put me in piano when I was 7 or 8, and I just loved piano, and I just continued playing piano basically, and then switched to guitar when I was in high school, like a typical high school kid does. And then I started playing bass, and then I started playing bass when in late high school when there was no bass players in the band I was in, and it was like, okay, I'll try playing bass, and then realized how how much I love bass, and that's pretty much me. But yeah.
Yeah, I started on guitar when I was 12, I think. And my sister was getting guitar lessons, and I was like, I want to do that. And then I got obsessed, like, right away. Loved it. And shout out Hank Williamson. He was my guitar teacher. He would come over once a week. And then, just played music, had bands, like, from the time I was probably 15 years old on, just always had a band going. Like, originally I did like Led Zeppelin covers and like Pink Floyd covers, AC/DC covers, like bands, like stuff like that, like Battle of the Bands at the Jewish Community Center kind of stuff.
And then after high school, both of us, we actually Leon and I knew each other of each other in high school because he had a band called Terminal Cafe, and I was like jealous. They had a MySpace page, and I was like, wow,
what a great band name.
Terminal Cafe.
Well, Vancouver is called the Terminal City. It's kind of a nickname for it.
Perfect.
But basically, we knew of each other in high school, and then when we graduated, we both went to the same music college called VCC in Vancouver, and we right away it was like, yo, what's up, man? Like, let's write some music together, because we didn't know many other people. And then Leon basically asked me to be in his band at the time, which was called Right, RIGHT, and we started from there, and then that was it.
Yeah, we sort of the group sort of founded out of the School of Music there at VCC. Like, I met Darren there, I met Kurt there. I met Nate because we had met earlier, and then Duncan.
Our drummer.
Duncan, yeah, me and my buddy Duncan was our drummer, and I went to high school with him. So, but pretty much everybody other than Duncan was like, out of the School of Music there. So it's all music geeks in the band, like we're all.
Right. Yeah, I think that's pretty apparent. I think just from the skill, obviously, but it's relevant to me now. Like I said, I haven't done an interview in like 5 months or something, and I've been busy working on music, but I'm approaching for the first time, hopefully getting a band together. And like, it gives me new questions to ask, because it really makes me consider how people have to kind of vet their band members, and like, what are the qualities you're looking for when you're searching for people? Because a lot of times people just, oh, hey, I responded to an ad on Craigslist, and like we all liked prog rock, and that was it. And and then some people are looking for something a little bit more than that. So, I mean, how did you guys kind of decide on your group?
I mean,
well,
yeah, we put people through a grueling audition. So you don't even want to know what we do, but I won't go into that. I can't disclose it over this anyways. But we definitely were lucky, because those, as Leon just said, we already knew each other, and our drummer was an old friend of ours, and so was our guitar player. It was like when you start a band in high school, it's friends, so you don't even have to think really about where are we going to find a keyboard player. Like, it's just your friends. So, but obviously, once we didn't have our original drummer with us, we had to find a drummer, and that was a hard process, partly because Vancouver is a tiny city,
right?
And there's just not that many drummers out there, and the ones who are here are the ones who are working and are available are busy doing 15 projects at once. So we're like, it's really difficult. But
we had these insanely high standards for our drummers that we wanted, and we actually did audition a lot of people. And our big thing was trying to get them to play the 15/8 part in Leviathan, which is pretty I don't know, it's pretty tough on the drums, and at least to make it like flow like we wanted, because we wanted it, because it's complicated, but like we never wanted it to just be complicated for its own sake. Like we always want to like still needs to feel like a horse galloping. So like as soon as Kyle came in and did that beat, we were like, okay, perfect.
All right, cool. When can you start?
Yeah, exactly. We're like, okay.
I definitely noticed that. Like there's like a Phil Collins level of like manic drumming on the new album that I really appreciate. I also play drums, so
nice.
it makes sense to me that there's like a lot of spots where it's just really fast and crazy, and then like super groovy later. And I thought, man, I couldn't come up with that. That's for sure.
Yeah, Kyle did a great job finessing like a lot of those parts. You know, I mean, you know, when we were writing it, we were. A lot of the time, it's just it because of how the time signatures are situated. Like the drum beat has to be cool in a way. Even if you do the most simple version of whatever that time signature is, it's still 11 or whatever, 9 or 7. 10,
you mean the time signature makes the drummer play something unique no matter what?
Because it's gonna have to be.
It's uneven, or it doesn't have a set. You know, it's not like 4 on the floor. It's cyclical or something. Yeah,
exactly. That's what we were kind of thinking, like cyclical and sort of spiral like.
That makes sense. Yeah. Now, the $1 million question is always, okay, how do you write music? Because, you know, I struggle to do this, and I know a lot of people, you can just throw them all in a room and they just have these ideas that come out of their head. But I don't know. I'm always curious to hear what each musician's process is, because I think it varies so widely from person to person. So how do you guys get your ideas for Glass Kites, and how do you put them into action?
Nate?
We write some of it. Some of it was written separately, but I'd say most of it is written. Leon and I kind of wrote together, and then, as I said, some of it was finessed and written with the whole group. So, but if you're just talking about in general how we write when we're alone, I mean, it's either on a piano, you know, singing to myself, playing chords, and
I think it's fair to say we go with the jazz thing of just harmony and melody. Like if we'll write the changes and we'll write whatever the melody is, and the melody doesn't have to be the vocal; it can be just the synth that's happening or what. Yeah, right?
It depends. It depends too. Like sometimes it'll be a drum beat. I'm sure. I think a lot of the ideas started with just a drum beat. Like, oh, let's write something over this drum groove that we both really like. But then some of it is this chord progression that we write. Here, write a melody to it. Everything is different, all the parts. So.
We start. I think a lot of it started from acoustic guitar, piano, drums, ideas, but also in our imaginations too. I mean, it's so varied. Like the whole album is so different. Like you could ask us the same question about each song, and the answer would be different. So it's a bit hard to. As you can see, we're struggling to like answer that because there's so many. We recorded in so many different environments. Like we got this really churchy, like piano sound at Nate's place. He had this like really kind of belly sounding wooden piano that we just had to get sound of. So we recorded there. Like we recorded at studios sometimes. We recorded just at home. Like.
But in terms of writing, we did.
Yeah, writing.
There was. We did a lot of like each of us has an acoustic guitar, and we're just sitting on my porch in the sun. And, writing, I have a few chord progressions, and then I'll be like, here, write a melody to this. And then, it's very collaborative like that, I'd say.
We take notes pretty early on. Like, they'd probably be indistinguishable to most people. In fact, Nate just showed me one that we made, like, from a few years back, and we can't decipher it, but it's, like, a 10-part thing, and, like, the first one is, like, F times 9, and we're like, wow. But the thing is, if we knew what we were talking about, it'd be like a perfect guide, probably, because we're very we try to lay everything out. For this record, we had a lot of posters. We had these white posters that we would write out the huge song forms on, because it's actually a lot to keep track of when you're just trying to play as a group. And Yeah, it was fun. So that really helped. And then
I would say
recording also is really big. Like when you're trying ideas out for the first time, always be recording, like in the jam space, and because you never know. Like sometimes you have a brilliant flash over something that's just fairly simple, and then you want to be able to capture that.
And I would just say that when you're music nerds, kind of like we are, writing music is it's easy because you're just nerding out and you're just like, I feel like the less sort of nerdy music theory kind of person you are, it'll just be harder and harder to put down an idea sometimes. But I don't know, just because we're such music nerds, I don't know, it's stuff just kind of flows out because we're like, oh, let's try this chord to this chord. And we're just nerding out over like two chords back and forth. And we're like, oh, I love the way that harmony changes. So yeah, it gives you more to love, and it gives you reasons why your song is good in your own head. You're like, yeah, this song's good because it goes between that. So it's anything to help yourself love your own art more is really important, because most people don't like their own shit,
Oh, okay. What makes you say that, Nate? Only because I've met plenty of musicians over my life, and some people will give me the philosophy of like, I merely write music to serve my own ears. Like, I don't give a shit what anybody else thinks about it. And then some people are like, well, it kind of needs to sound good, but like, I don't go back and listen to my own album, Like, I feel like there's two camps there. You guys seem to be in I'm definitely going to listen to this album because I made it.
No. It's opposite. I mean, I cannot listen. I cannot listen to stuff I've made. Honestly, it's hard for me because I've heard it a billion times by the time it comes out. So the fun is sort of gone for me. And and in that way, it is meant for other people because you've heard it a billion times. Now it is time for, someone's calling me. Now it's time for other people to hear it. But no, we definitely just follow our inner ear. Like, as I said, we're just nerding out. Like, oh, we love this chord progression. It's for us. But we're not, it's kind of just like, if you're in, whatever you're into, is going to come out. And we're not into noise music. We're not into experimental noise music. So there is kind of that, like, like someone might like this because it's melodic and it's pretty. We're making pretty music. So.
Yeah, I think we come from that school of thought of like Bill Evans, like the inner yourself. You're the primary listener. You just have to try and impress yourself, and that will be the thing that impresses other people ultimately. Yeah. And if you're thinking, and I think what Nate means by like most people don't like even like their own stuff is like there's definitely a lot of music made now where they're trying to make it appealing to the other rather than to, I guess, your inner what you really love about music. And but I mean, it's not easy to make a pop hit. Like, I'm not denigrating that in the slightest. Like, that's potentially just as difficult. I mean, to make a really great, I don't mean like charting. I mean something that actually like matters.
But
it's just really difficult to appreciate your own music. Music. You're not supposed to.
I think it's your job to listen to it over and over and be the person who listens to it sound kind of like garbage over and over, and then once it doesn't sound like garbage anymore, then you can let it go.
Sure.
Or something. I don't know. I mean, that's really negative, but just try to, I don't know, whittle away at it.
Well, that does answer my question about, like, okay, what are some philosophies you have about writing music and creating it? But another thing I usually jot down is kind of, when you write an album of the scope you did, like, what is the takeaway you're looking for in your audience? But I guess that's not really a question I should ask because, every single person's going to have a different takeaway. But I wasn't sure if, being that, like, you were talking about the concept of ideology, if there's something you kind of hid in there that you're like, I really hope if you get one little crumb out of this, it's
right. Okay, well, I think that sometimes themes, at least for me, are emergent in terms of I'm not necessarily planning a theme when I'm composing. But then sometimes once a piece of music is composed and I'm going to write some lyrics, I'm using what's in the harmony to kind of inspire me. And so there were definitely some elements of just, there's a lot of like dissonance and like warning, things that sound like warning kind of vibes to me in the harmony. I don't know really how to explain it, but And if you look at the 20th century, I mean, obviously ideologies can be extremely dangerous, right? Like, no, really, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but something that I think we kind of forget too much. And so that sort of became a running theme, but not in the sense that every lyric written was for that purpose necessarily. Sometimes the lyrics just come, flowing through the mind or whatever, But there was enough of a through line, I thought, to, hit on that theme of just the danger of ideology in general. Be very dangerous, and to take the approach of not having all the answers, which is, I think, the last little sample I do in the record. Like,
the most dangerous ideology is maximalism.
Yeah, for sure. But
I think, going against your own word.
I can't remember what the last quote is, but I think it's like, to my mind, the truth is never something we can possess, or something like that. Just that truth isn't something we should try to house or claim that we only have, or that only people have it, or that.
Yeah, I think that's a skill that most people improve with age, is being able to admit when you're wrong. And clearly, if you ever turn on the news, there's a lot of people that haven't learned that skill.
There's a lot of people who are just positive of what's right.
Yes, like I am 100% certain that everything I'm saying is exactly correct. And now that I'm talking to you guys about it, I don't know of a lot of albums that address that really specifically. Like, I mean, sure, there's plenty of albums. I mean, like, the entire thrash metal genre is like basically anti-authoritarian and question everything. But I mean, I think the way you've done it in such a poised manner is, I mean, concept albums are clearly nothing new in the prog world, but
it's kind of hidden. I mean, it's like there's a lot of imagery of false prophecy on the record. I don't know if but you might pick that up, but there's some stuff about just, it almost sounds like a prophet, like saying, like, "Ooh, like check this thing out," and like almost leading you down a path, That can be.
Well, I know the album cover has the upside down crosses, and but I didn't actually think about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for sure. That was the idea. It was reframing ideology. That was the idea. But that was a real photo. Flipped upside down.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I was driving.
I mean,
I didn't think
was it just like on the side of the road somewhere?
Yeah, I was driving, and my girlfriend at the time took this picture just while and it just had the perfect focus with the clouds in the background. And
California?
I can't remember where it was, to be honest. I think it was in America though. And when it was flipped upside down, I just went, that makes so much sense with the theme of the record. Just right away, it just made sense to me. Yeah.
I love those little happenstance moments. Like you couldn't have planned it for the world, but
that's the thing. Yeah, that's what I mean about them.
Here it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Well, okay, so I could go one of two ways here with questions, and I think I'm going to lean back into, now that you guys have, Glass Kites 2 out, and pandemic's making it kind of hard to do any kind of, like, album cycle as you traditionally would.
Right.
But are you already working on new material, and kind of where are you going to take things from here?
I think we want to get back into, once things open up, to just getting back into our live configurement we talked a lot about, and just going from there, just jamming like as a band again and having that experience. Like, I think we all miss that a lot. And
the band has never been traditional in terms of the way we release things. Obviously, this is only our second album, so but we definitely I think a goal is to be more traditional per se, right? So to just get it, get a band going and really stick with it for a while. And we have tons of ideas. We're sitting on musical ideas that we have left over from writing, and
a lot.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the record's only 31 minutes, I think, right? So a lot of stuff got cut, and there's a lot of stuff in there that definitely we want to work on, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like so many just creative people right now in general are just in this weird holding pattern because they really don't, they're having to like reinvent how they market online and how they reach out to people and maybe go through these non-traditional channels of promotion or, hey, send it to everybody in your Zoom call tomorrow. Like, like there's no guidebook for this. And so I think brave isn't the right word because you want to get your music out there anyway, but I do give you a lot of credit for just sticking this out here at like the tail end of this as we're hoping that we're going to like be weaning out of a pandemic. Mm-hmm. And then it's just anybody's guess what's going to happen or if it's going to be received well. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, have you had like anything major kind of pop up since it got put out? Like, I mean, that sounds like a stupid question. It's been out for very long.
No, I mean, it's been. I'm just very humbled anytime anybody listens to it ever. So I'm like a child every time like a sale comes in or whatever. But no, we've been selling a bunch of CDs from our Bandcamp page and getting a lot of really nice, letters from people all over the world, which has been really nice. And people have been reaching out for interviews like yourself. I just did an interview this morning, which was fun.
Oh, so I'm sure you're having a blast repeating everything that got.
No, it's good. I mean, I'm honestly, it was good to warm up a bit, honestly, because it's usually don't talk about it out loud. I just do it, So it's it's refreshing. It's been good.
That being said, what would you change about the musical ecosystem? Like the way, if you could change anything about how the industry works.
You mean pre-COVID or with COVID?
Oh, that's a good point. Well, I guess pre-COVID, but I mean, everybody says the new normal. So it's like, I guess now, what would you change now?
I just think labels should take bigger risks myself. I mean, I know that's maybe self-serving.
You mean major labels?
Yeah. I just think that that'd be one thing. But I mean, people like what they like. I mean, you can't force anything, really. Kind of just, And there's so many people listening to music nowadays that there's a lot of ecosystems to exist in.
Yeah, I think it's actually a really good time for the industry the last 10 years or so. As the internet has risen to be the main source of how people get music, it's actually created so many lanes for weird niches of genres that you would have never known there was like 1 million people who want this type of music. Yeah. And back in the traditional era of the music industry, you would only hear about the biggest bands who had the financial backing to promote themselves, to be promoted, and all the other small bands were lost in time. Especially if they didn't put out any records, like they're just lost in time. Nowadays, like you can get your music out to the whole world without any financial backing, pretty much. It's free, the internet, and so I think it's a good time right now.
It's democratized. Like if you're good, like you're gonna have people listening to you on some level for sure.
It's hard to know what to change. I don't know what
things are changing so quickly. It's hard to even keep up. Like I think TikTok's the biggest thing right now for streams. Like
that seems
it is hard to keep up. Yeah. I don't pay that much attention to that. I just think about the fan experience only, and just think about what it's like. How I try to just go after what I love the most about albums I love the most. Like you listen to Animals by Pink Floyd, and it just whatever. It takes you from one song to the next song to the that's a fan experience. The artwork works with it. That's the fan experience, and like in terms of the industry and everything, I don't really know. But it's so true that now you can just get your music out there. Bandcamp is incredible. I mean, we've been able to keep track of everybody who's like downloaded our stuff and like blast out our new album to them, and it's been so great. Like the response has been, I mean, it's pretty small, but still like just humbling for sure.
Well, I can say that one of the people I shared it with the other day, I had someone listening with me in Costa Rica. So, I mean, you're going international. But yeah, and I was like, I was trying to think about, well, should I phrase that question any differently? Because I know you guys are in Canada, but like in my experience, the Canadian music scene has always operated quite similarly to the American. I mean, I've gone to Canada just to see shows, and it felt like I was right up the street. Like, it never really felt that different to me. But I know every country's a little different with, kind of how they treat music, like, as a commodity. I mean, clearly there's economic differences between our two countries, and it, I don't know. I always get the sense that Canada puts a higher emphasis on like art for art's sake and music for music's sake instead of, our wonderful capitalistic way of monetizing everything here in America. So
right.
We're blessed actually because Canada supports the arts heavily. There's tons of support for art here, and
well, there's a Canadian content rule, which is that 30%, I think, of content has to be Canadian, I think, on the radio stations and stuff, which is nice.
Oh.
And
I would say that the art for art's sake thing is slowly changed to be more like the States. Like Canada started in the 70s and 80s way more like that, and then it's slowly, corporatized, and I forget what capital, it's become more it's
like monetized, I guess.
It's definitely changed since the 70s and 80s, but so has all music. But no, we have a lot of support here. We have a great grant system. There's a lot to be happy about as a Canadian musician, I would say.
Yeah, but having said that, it's it's not on the level of like an LA or a Nashville or a New York or where it's just
exactly.
You go to Nashville and you get there, there's just guitars all over the walls in the airport, and it's all music all the time. And you go down to the main street and there's a band in every. We have a good music scene here, but it's not the same. It's not like every place is open till 4 and they're all playing music. Like it's not
right.
Or like in New York, where you just any club you walk into, you're going to see the greatest jazz musicians. Like it's a little more modest, but at the same time, like Canadian artists have this. I think have this alien quality. Great ones, at least.
Especially Justin Bieber and Drake. Yeah.
Canada's greatest exports.
No. but like Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, like Leonard Cohen, like
Rush.
Yeah, it was true. I mean, Rush.
True.
I mean, the Tragically Hip. Like they're all American in some ways, but like a little bit different. A little bit of an alien sort of. Where does this person come from? Like when you hear Joni Mitchell, it's like, it sounds like an alien goddess. Like
when your music gets to the top in Canada, like when you rise up in Canada, you're kind of set because the competition is less. First of all, and you'll have a lot of support as soon as you break through to the top. Like it's easy to stay at the top kind of once you're there in Canada. I've seen because the grant system supports you. People trust you. Oh, you can play a show and sell this place out, and there's just it's good in that way, I would say. But it's still hard if you're a brand new band. It's
I think we rely on America though, like truly, like at the end of the day, like bands. If you're gonna get really big, like you're getting big in the U.S. for sure. I mean, it's such a big market, and it's right there.
Right. And how far are you guys from the border?
Probably 2 to 3 hours, I would say.
Okay.
Less,
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. It is funny you say that though. How like Canadian artists have this certain quality. It's funny that I'm doing this interview now, and just last week I absolutely binge listened to one of the podcasts from the CBC that's been done since like 2019, but I was just catching up with it now, and this woman lived in Toronto, and like I just enjoyed it so much because she was just so damn Canadian. Like she was just so proud of everything that she like could do in her life, even though this great tragedy had happened to her. And I just felt like, I don't know, it's like pleasurable to hear other people talk about being happy to be where they're from. And I know this is kind of going off course.
No,
but,
Canada's a great place. Like it's incredible.
We're the underdogs. we're still the underdogs, sort of. That's how we feel, right?
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, one of my favorite experiences ever was when I got my passport to go. I drove up to St. Catharines to go see a show, and it just felt like everybody at that show, they were complete strangers to me, but they just welcomed me like, oh my God, you drove up like 6 hours from the U.S. for this? I was like, hell yeah, I did. They're like, come on, I mean, it was just so welcoming and so much fun. So
I love that.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. But either way, so it sounds like you guys, as well as myself, we're all aching to get back to shows and stuff right now.
Definitely.
I mean, is your live show as a band any like drastically different than the studio? Like, are there certain things you changed, or is it mostly stick to the script?
Well, if you look at my sessions, you would know that's because it's like 200 tracks. Like, yeah, we can't do it. Like, it's definitely
aside from that.
Yeah, but like the thing is, when we initially arranged the record, we did it as a live quintet. Most of the time, our keyboard player would have, be doing two things at once, like MIDI up here and the keyboards below. And then a lot of the time, Nate would be playing bass with his left hand and then with his right hand actually playing, like, synth or something. So we had to do these crazy workarounds. Also, some sequencing and stuff I remember we used to do, like playing to a click and having some things sequenced. But we can pretty much get there with a bass player like Nate who can play keyboards as well, and then 2 guitars. It basically means you can have 3 keyboards happening at once, 2 guitars, bass, and then drums and vocals. So that's pretty much covers everything. But
with
we were just
5
talking, with 5 people. We were just talking about maybe getting background singers when we potentially for some parts when things open up, obviously. But just because I love the sound of vocal blends and stuff. And,
it's a lot of people to drag around and a lot of stuff, but I mean...
Well, we like doing that.
When you can make it worth it.
We have like a Steely Dan cover band that we have, and like, I think there's 8 people in that, right, Nate?
9 or something.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
my parents like grew up on Steely Dan basically, and man, that would be a fun cover band.
Yeah, it is a fun one. Yeah, fun. Yeah. We do that. We kind of do that era of. It's called West Coast Dream Team. If you want to go check it out.
Huh. Okay. All right. I will check that out.
Yeah.
Well, I have some kind of wrap up, kind of more general questions for both of you guys, but I always like to ask, what's the best advice you can give? I mean, in terms of music. Or, like, if you have a really, really fantastic life philosophy, I'd love to hear it.
Okay.
Wow. Trust your own desires and follow your own desires. Don't let other people change you doing what you really want to do. Just, like, do what you want to do, and if you love that, it will pay off, guaranteed. Like, if you give it enough time and focus on what you really love doing, it'll pay off. I guarantee you.
Or your money back.
Maybe not, but...
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. Perfect.
Okay. I mean, it is very, very good life advice. So
that was really my advice for Leon. So.
Thanks, man. Dude, appreciate you saying that. This is a public forum, and so I'm a little bit upset at you, but we'll talk about that
after. Well, since you both seem to agree, then I'll just move on to the next question, which is what defines success to you?
I guess being able to do what you want to do. I mean, I automatically think of it as a musician. So being able to make the music you want to make, and then having that support you, in your life.
Yeah, success is the combination of your job and your hobby. That's pretty much what it is.
And we, like, for instance, I'm a music teacher on the side. Like, I love teaching. I get a lot out of it for sure. But, like, ultimately it'd be great to just be able to just do the music full time and just that's success to me. Just being able to make the things you want to make and then having that support your life, and that's it. I mean, what else could you want? People get greedy. People get greedy. I don't know. That's pretty good. That sounds pretty perfect to me.
Okay. Next question would be, who are some of your biggest influences just in your life? Not musical influences, but like you mentioned your guitar teacher earlier. Like who are people who have really shaped your path?
Okay. Shout out to Hank Williamson again. I had a dad for sure.
Oh shit.
No, how dare you, dude? I'm talking. No, yeah, like teachers are huge. Like I had so many teachers. I had Paula Kramer was a great teacher at VCC. One of the best teachers I've ever seen teach. She taught solfege and ear training. Changed my life for sure. Just being able to hear a melody and know how it's constructed just based on the re mi's and stuff like that's incredible. Like she opened up a whole landscape to me. But yeah, my dad for sure like showed me a lot of music growing up. Stax Records, Motown, like Sounds of Philadelphia, the Beatles, Frank Sinatra, Smokey Robinson. Just like I thought that was normal. I thought everybody just listened to that stuff, but he had great taste in music, so that was big for me. And I'm trying to think who else. So many people. Honestly, my high school band teacher, Chris Thompson. Is that the question? Who inspired me?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, in a more abstract way, like I just love John Lennon in general. Everything he says and did was perfect. I mean, he's crazy. And, Nate?
My teachers over the years have been a big influence and inspiration. I had a teacher named Paul Plimley who was like a free jazz pianist, and he really showed me he really showed me how to open up as a musician and just do your own thing and trust your own voice. Trying to think, I mean, there's a local musician named Mocha Only who lives in Vancouver, who he was in a group called Swollen Members in the 90s, which was like a rap group. And he's a huge inspiration to both of us musically, and also just in terms of his work ethic, how he's created a legacy of music, and he's released over 100 albums. It's absolutely incredible.
Whoa.
And he's like a jazz hip hop, like weird off kilter sort of hip hop stuff guy. And he's a huge inspiration and influence. But
for the band, like in general, we were going for loved Genesis, loved Mew, loved Radiohead, Pink Floyd, Beatles, all those people. But honestly, if you're talking inspiration personally, like just friends and stuff, Nate has been a huge inspiration to me.
Way to go, Nate.
Growing up with Dave, my good friend Dave Pimentel, who's now a super successful producer in his own right. He's called Pomo. He's an amazing artist. Like so many people, like all the bands we used to play with back in the day. Like
every musician who we've come in contact with has had an impact on us for sure.
Josh Matsumoto from Panther and the Superfly. Like everybody. I don't know.
I'm coming away with a list of new bands to listen to is what I'm hearing. So
that was the band that we moved to Montreal with. Anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I normally have my big final question. So before I ask it, I wanted to ask you guys if there's anything else you want to mention about Glass Kites, about the new album. I always drop links and stuff at the very end, so I would direct people to your page. But just if there's anything that I didn't cover that you want to get out there.
Hope you enjoy, and I would encourage you to listen to the whole thing. If you have 30 minutes to just listen to a record, it's a journey, and you enjoy. Much more to say. It's all in the music.
Okay, that's fair. Nate, anything?
I would say there's a Genesis album called Wind and Wuthering that came out in the late 70s. And that specific album, in terms of the Genesis influence, is heavily because Genesis changed sound over the years. And that album, I want more people to listen to that Genesis album, Wind and Wuthering. It's incredible.
And then there were 3 also.
Yeah, that one too.
My face is going like this because the guy from Costa Rica that I listened to your album with the other day, I said, oh man, I was like, this does really sound like what I think Genesis sounds like, because I hadn't listened to it, and I was like, wait, you know Genesis? I said, what Genesis album would I like based on this? And he's like, oh, Wind and Wuthering.
Yeah,
so like he knew it. He totally knew it.
Crazy.
So that's perfect.
Wow.
Well then speaking of albums, before I let you guys get on with your night, my last question for everybody is always, if you could only listen to 3 albums for the rest of your life, what would they be and why?
Whoa.
Okay,
Desert
Frank
Island,
Zappa.
right?
Frank Zappa apostrophe is probably my top 3, because just how that album goes everywhere, and yet it's so focused, and it's a concept album. It's a story and an album, so that gives it more weight. If I'm on an island, I can follow along a story and keep myself occupied. And that's one of my favorite albums of all time. And then probably, it's such a hard question because it's like the albums you've heard a billion times. Would you still want to listen to those on a desert island, or would you want to discover 3 new albums that you love on that island? And you're like, yes, I'm set for the next 2 years on this island. So, you know, it's hard. Like Dark Side of the Moon is obviously a holy grail, but it's like I've probably heard that enough in my life now that I wouldn't have to take it with me.
Yeah,
that's an interesting way of looking at that question.
Anything else ever again?
Yeah,
that's the devastating part. Yeah,
that's
hard.
the evil part. That's the evil part of this question.
Yeah,
I might put a yes close to the edge in there. Just because I'm looking at the cassette of it, and it is one of my favorite albums, and it's got so many different moments, and it goes all over the place. That's what I would get albums that have that change all the time in the music and go to a lot of different places.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you get more bang for your buck, I guess.
Yeah.
I was just scrolling like a madman through my Spotify so I don't mess this up. So I think Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder.
That's double album.
And then the White Album.
All 3 are double albums.
Yeah, well, I only have
that's
3.
perfect.
Well,
that's what I mean.
Well, he's a smart man.
You know, I need to be able to. And think about it. The White Album is so many different things. Like every song is totally different, and I feel like, and The Wall was like my favorite album for like a few years. So it's like, yeah.
Oh, okay. You're reaching up. Oh, perfect. Okay.
Hell yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I would say both of you guys are surrounded by a lot of music media, I can see. So, Nate, you were like flipping through your record collection, and I'm like, oh damn, I'm gonna hit him with my last question, and he's gonna have like 300 things on his wall. See that, Baby Yoda?
Yeah, I got talking to Baby Yoda right now. It's really important to me.
And I think you have one more, Nate.
Yeah, I might go with. It's really hard, but possibly it's a Mew record. It could be, but I don't know. I'm gonna put Gino Vanelli, Brother to Brother, in there.
What type of music is that? I feel like I should know it.
It's jazz fusion pop, basically, from the late 70s. His name's Gino Vanelli. He's Canadian, and the album is called Brother to Brother. It's
okay.
It's funky fusion pop sort of music. Yeah.
Canadian legend. Shout out Gino Vanelli.
Okay. I could use some education on Canadian musicians other than Rush.
It does even sound like Canadian, when you listen to it. I guess
sounds like an LA.
But yeah, he sounds like an LA artist. Totally.
Yeah. That's okay. Well, I got some stuff to listen to now. That's really the reason I asked that question, is just so I get like 6 new albums every episode. Now that's not the reason. I it's not because I like to torment people either, but I think a lot of people they're like, oh, I've been waiting for you to ask me that, and these are the 3 things that I have like in my head. And then some people they agonize over it. So thank you for being good sports about it, both of you.
Yeah, no, it's a tough question. He said, who knows? Maybe in some crazy, dystopian future, we'll all only take 3 albums with us, and it'll be good that we know and have it listed like I do now, right here.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, okay. Well, yeah, I don't have much more to ask you guys, but I do appreciate you giving me your time tonight and letting me pick your brains about yourselves and the new record. And I definitely have been and will continue to be sharing it with all of my kind of Genesis loving friends, and more than that, because I think it just really.
Just tell them this band tried to sound like Genesis, failed, and then this was the result, and they'll be like, okay, and then they'll be ready.
I think it stands on its own. So, but
yeah, it's its own thing. I mean, it's funny because sometimes we get like crazy metalheads who are like, we love it, and then sometimes people are like, you sound like Coldplay, and it's like, we're kind of like everything in between. Like it's weird. Like no, not even in a bad way. Like I appreciate Coldplay. So I mean, we love everybody, and thank you for your interest. Like, it means a lot. Very humbled by it. And
thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
That's it, folks. Hope you enjoyed my interview with Leon and Nate of Glass Kites. Maybe once we get back to having concerts in person, especially if you're on the western coast of Canada or the US, maybe you can get a chance to go see them. In the meantime, check them out on Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere you can get music, and also please go to their Bandcamp, which is glasskites.bandcamp.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.